Hopefully you watched the video above and know that we are going to build some compounds and some elements using the blocks on this website right here. So hopefully you have opened the website and you know what we're talking about. So right now we're going to go back to the Word and we're going to read about the instructions. We got to know what we're doing, right? So right here it says red Legos are used to represent hydrogen atoms, blue Legos are used to represent oxygen atoms, and yellow Legos are used to represent carbon atoms. So that's the only three elements that we're talking about today. The first thing we're going to do is construct a model of each of the following compounds using Legos, and then after we construct each model, we're going to fill in the blanks for that element or compound in the data chart below. So here is our data chart. So let's come back up here and look at our first one. A is a carbon. So we need to create carbon, one carbon atom. So if we look right here, carbon is going to be represented by yellow Legos. So we'll go back to this right here. I've got some hanging out, so I'm going to get rid of them. To do that, I'm going to click on this eraser and just click on those to get rid of them. And our instructions were carbon, and we need one yellow Lego to make a carbon atom. So there we go. That's Legos. That's one carbon atom right there. So let's go back to our chart and see what it wants us to fill out. So the first one is C for carbon. So how many atoms of each element did we have in our carbon? Did we have any hydrogen atoms in there? No. So I'm going to put a 0 there. Did we have any oxygen? No. Did we have any carbon? We did. We did have carbon because we were building carbon. How many atoms of carbon did we have in that? We just had one, right? So I'm going to put a 1 right there. How many atoms did we have total in our carbon? We had 1 total. Okay? So the last question here, is this an element or a compound? We can look right here and remember we're going to be counting capital letters. Okay? So this is a chemical symbol. How many capital letters do we have right there? Just 1, right? That's all we had is 1. So if we have only 1, we know automatically that we have an element. If it's more than 1, that's when we get a compound. So we're going to write a C. We're going to put an E for element right there because 1 capital letter means an element. Okay? Let's go back up here and build the next one. B, we're going to build water. So H2O, I bet you've heard that before. H2O is water, so we're going to connect 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom together. So what color are our hydrogen? They're red. So let's go back to our website. We need 2 red ones connected together. And we need 1 oxygen atom. And oxygen is blue. So we'll grab a blue one and stick it over here. And now we have water. We've got a compound of water right there. We've got 1, 2, 3 atoms all together. Kind of neat, right? Okay, let's look at our chart down here. So how many atoms of hydrogen do we have? This little number 2 right there tells you that we have 2 atoms of hydrogen. So we're going to put a 2 in that box. How many atoms of oxygen? Well, we know that we have at least 1, right? And we know it's only 1 because there's no other number beside that O right there. So we've got 1 capital O, so we have 1 atom of oxygen. Do we have any carbon over here? Do you see any C's? No, we don't have any C's. So we're going to put 0 right there. And now for a total amount of atoms in this chemical formula, we're just going to add them up. So we got 2, 3, 0 is still 3. So our total is 3. Is this an element or a compound? We're counting capital letters, right? So we have 1 capital H, 1 capital O. We have more than 1 chemically bound together. We have a compound. So we're going to put a C for compound right here. All right, next on our list, we're going to build hydrogen. So we're going to connect two hydrogen atoms together. If you remember, hydrogen is red. So let's go to our website over here. We need two hydrogen atoms. 1, 2. Okay, there we have our molecule of hydrogen. Let's come back over here and look at our table. So how many hydrogen atoms do we have? Again, that little number 2 tells us that we have 2. So I'm going to put a 2 in that box. How many oxygen atoms do we have right here? No capital O's, so we don't have any oxygen. How many carbon atoms? Do you see any capital C's? I didn't see any either. So we're going to put 0. How many do we have total if we add these across? That's right. We only have 2 atoms. Okay. How many capital letters we need to know if it's an element or a compound? How many capital letters do we have in H2? Just 1, right? If we only have 1 capital letter, is it an element or a compound? That's right. It's an element. So make sure you have an E right there. Last but not least, we are going to build carbon dioxide. That's what we breathe out. Every time we breathe in, we get that oxygen, our bodies use the oxygen, and we exhale carbon dioxide. So to do this, we're going to connect 2 oxygen atoms to 1 carbon atom. So oxygen is blue, we need 2 blues, and we need 1 yellow. So let's go to our website. We're going to grab 2 blue ones, 1, 2, and stick those together. And we need 1 carbon, so we've got 2 oxygens, 1 carbon, boom. There we have carbon dioxide. Kind of cool, right? Okay. Let's go back to our table and fill that out. CO2, how many hydrogens, how many big capital H's do you see right here? 0. That's right. So we don't have any hydrogen in carbon dioxide. How many oxygen atoms do we have in carbon dioxide? So we're going to look for the capital O. And do we have a number by that capital O? We do. We've got a number 2. So we know there are 2 atoms of oxygen by this right here, just because of that 2. So we're going to put the number 2 in this box right here. Okay. How many carbon atoms do we have in carbon dioxide? We don't have a number right there by that capital C, so automatically no, there's only 1. So we're going to put a 1 in that box right there. Okay, we're going to add them across the board right here. So we've got 0 plus 2 plus 1. Our total number of atoms for this carbon dioxide is 3. So we're going to put a 3 right here. Okay, is this an element or is it a compound? Let's look for those capital letters. All right, we've got a capital C. And here we have a capital O. So there's 2. So remind me, if we have more than 1 capital letter in a chemical formula, is it an element or a compound? That's right, it is a compound. So we're going to put a C for compound right here. Okay, so here is a little neat trick too. Our total number of atoms, remember, we're looking at the number. Okay, we're adding them together. That's our total number of atoms right there. But for the element or a compound, see, we still have an element right here, even though we have 2 atoms. So you can't go by the number of atoms, because even though we have 2 atoms, they're the same element. So that's not a compound because it's not 2 different elements stuck together. It's 2 of the same elements stuck together. So that's still just an element. That is what we call a molecule of hydrogen, okay? Because they're stuck together. It's still an element though, so don't get that confused just because it has more than 1 atom. If they're the same type, it's still just an element. Whenever we get into the compounds is when we have 2 different types of atoms that are combined, okay? I hope that makes sense. Hope you have fun with this. Feel free to come back to this website and build some other atoms and molecules and different compounds. If you want, you can take a picture of a new element or compound that you make and you can send it to me. I'd love to see what you get. So remember, scroll down to the bottom and we'll talk about the questions at the end.